All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, and we thank you for staying with us so far. Just to launch us into the conversation proper, let's take this background report from Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Towards the end of last year, politics in Rivers State has been a major cause for discussion. It centered on godfatherism, as some refer it. It was between the former governor of the state, Nyesom Wike, and the incumbent, Siminalayi Fubara. The disagreement has continually generated a series of developments and reactions, with many yet to ascertain when it will end. There was the resignation of some commissioners loyal to the former governor, while lawmakers, also loyal to the FCT minister, have intensified their brawl with the governor. The melting point of the crisis was in November, when a part of the state's assembly was blown up. It turned out it was to stop an attempt by some lawmakers to impeach Governor Fubara. In the face of it all, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had intervened with the Presidential Peace Pact with signing of a resolution aimed at resolving the crisis. The president had directed that all matters instituted in the courts by the governor and his team in respect of the political crisis be withdrawn, and all impeachment proceedings against the governor by the State House of Assembly should be immediately dropped. Aside President Tinubu's intervention, former President Goodluck Jonathan recently, while in the state for a function, called for a truce in the Rivers State political crisis, asking both parties to work together, arguing that the stability of the oil-rich state is crucial to the nation's development. Former Governor Wike had once told journalists that he was indeed fighting back because the governor he installed was trying to dismantle its political structure in the state, and that impeachment is a constitutional route to addressing political problems. Now, one question many have kept asking is when will this crisis be resolved so that peace reigns in River State? Guests already seated in the studio will be discussing this shortly.
All right, thank you, Oyemi Ajayi, for the background report. I'm sure you're all aware, of course, of this topic. And just again to clarify that it's the solution. How do we approach the crisis in River State? And our guests that we have assembled will be able to give us, help us chart a positive way to arriving at the solution. And we have here with us in the studio Honorable Ahmad Sajo, who is the former Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Adamawa State. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, and our next guests are joining us from River State. And I'd like to introduce first, joining us from our studio there in Port Harcourt, Chief Festus Oguche, constitutional lawyer and public affairs analyst. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Yes, thanks for inviting me. Thank you very much.
All right, we have also been joined via Zoom this time from Port Harcourt as well by Seminitari Ibim, former Commissioner for Information and Communications, River State, and former Acting Managing Director of the Niger Delta Development Commission. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program this morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
So perhaps we begin right there in Port Harcourt and with you, Ibim. Can you give us some perspectives? Of course, we may just know that the two gladiators are in disagreement at some level. But can you give us some perspectives to it? What exactly is the bone of contention here?
I don't know what the bone of contention is, so it might be as an extraneous party, I might not be able to say this is the bone of contention. All I do know is that Rivers people woke up to allegations that some persons wanted to impeach the governor barely 2 months after he assumed office, which of course was a strange occurrence politically anywhere in the world, I would say. So that's what I know. I also know that for several months, it did appear that the governor and the other party were engaged in conversations. And that it's apparent to everyone, like you said, that that doesn't seem to have gone any further. What again I can say as a citizen looking from the sides is that it's clear that the governor um, was facing the pressure, political pressure, by some members of his party at the time who are no longer members of his party today. So I don't know. That's the much, and again, this is just reporting the facts as they are. I listened to you earlier and you've said what we didn't see we should talk about.
All right, Ibim, thank you very much for joining us. Let's also speak to the constitutional lawyer and public affairs analyst who is also joining us, but this time from our studios in Rivers. Yes, and that's Festus Eguche. Vice Festus, good to see you. Thank you very much. Well, if Ibim doesn't seem to know the bone of contention, some political analysts have couched it as political dynamics with a thin line of personal rivalries. But others also say, like, look, this is not new. This is just a manifestation of the sour end in our political dynamics or political process. What are your own views about what is happening in Rivers State?
Views are just the views that the ordinary citizen of Nigeria would hold about the nature of our politics and the prebendal inclination of our political elites, specifically in the area of power, holding on to power tenaciously by all means, by whatever reason, whether it is in the interest of the society or in the interest of the country or in the interest of self. It's a different matter altogether. But the Rivers, this particular one is quite a little, somewhat bizarre as far as I'm concerned, because I think it's the first of its kind coming up. There's been a lot of frictions amongst politicians, particularly at periods of transition. Odili and Amici, Wike, and now here we are with this one. And I think it's not something that should be taken lightly, because it's a scenario that if it's not left, if it's not treated very quickly, constitutionally speaking, it could result to very serious ends that we may not be able to contemplate. I think the reverse case, this particular imbroglio, is one that is deliberately masterminded, probably to shake the powers that are on ground, and probably to see how people can be made to kowtow to certain particular ends, which I think is very, very wrong. To the very best of my knowledge, the democratic system so far has evolved very, very well. And we may have some, inadequacies here and there, but it doesn't get to the extent by which we now begin to put challenges to the Constitution. Some of us activists and commentators alike, we can, say that anything can go, maybe certain discrepancies here and there in the conduct of elections, judicial decisions, but when it comes to issues of the Constitution, we are very serious about it, because it is the only thing, the only place where the democratic structure is rooted. And when that area is threatened, it becomes a different thing altogether. That's the much I can say so far, but I think the Rivers unfolding scenario in the Rivers State is something that could threaten democracy to its very foundations if we begin now not to handle it, tackle it frontally as it should be. Thank you very much.
I want to remain with you because you have just talked about handling this matter constitutionally, which means from your perspective, the causes have a constitutional root. So could you just disaggregate, those areas that you think would have to be dealt with constitutionally? What are those areas in this crisis that has to do with constitution? Barrister Oguche, I'm sorry. Okay.
Question, if you can repeat it. I didn't catch it. There was no voice here.
I'm saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the glitch there that you didn't get to hear my question. What I just wanted you to outline the areas in this crisis or conflict or controversy that you think have a direct bearing on the Constitution, since you have said it has to be dealt with constitutionally.
Oh yes, that's a very good question. In the matter of fact, as a matter of fact, every aspect of this controversy is embedded in the Constitution. Constitutional provisions take care of everything that has arisen, all the controversies, all the conflicts involved. Specifically, the area of we may forgive them for the manner of emergence of the governor. I think the people were waiting to see how they can raise those issues, and all of a sudden the controversies cropped up, and it was a very good thing for the governor as well, because the groundswell of public opinion is rather going towards his direction sympathetically, though. It's not that anybody is pleased with the manner that he emerged, and the electoral process that time has been a matter of dogged discussions, and people are yet to be satisfied about it. But then, if you're looking at it specifically from the core issues that give rise to this controversy, you understand that it's simply a power tussle between the ex-governor and the current governor, in terms of certain aspects of governance that you and I cannot fathom, and how it came into our political tradition or democratic tradition, we do not know. Godfatherism, which I think is beyond the way it is going, the manner it is going in our society has gone beyond the usual party patronage and privilege, contracts and all that, and opportunities, appointments that we know. But be that as it may, the core issue involved is that there's an allegation on the part of the ex-governor of an intransigence on the current governor. And he feels that maybe the governor should kowtow to his own views, or maybe he should just be governing remotely from where he is. And this governor here is saying no, and some certain aspects of it that underlie these controversies that are yet to be brought out in the open. We hear it at the grapevine, and we cannot bring grapevine to this conversation. But I think it has so much to do with the distribution of wealth, so many things involved. But one thing is paramount, that the people are not involved. The interests of the people are not determined, are not considered in the issue of who gets what and who goes where. Now, primarily, it's a matter of who exercises this power and who exercises the other power. And we have a scenario where a whole house, a whole executive council is divided between two persons who are tussling over themselves of who is the governor, who is the executive governor, who is supposed to exercise executive powers as the governor. It's a myriad of controversies that we may not be able to put your fingers on, but paramount amongst it also is the fact that some members are defected from the members of the House of Assembly from one political party to the other. And also that the president has come in and there's a pact, a sort of a peace pact, to see how these things can be mellowed down. A peace pact that's either ancillary to the Constitution or attached to the Constitution, or it has no constitutional relevance whatsoever. So it's propping up a whole lot of bizarre issues that you don't know where to place your hand, because people are not looking at the provisions of the Constitution, and that's my submission.
Chief Festus Oguche. Let's now come back to the studio where Ahmed Sajo is, would I say, chuckling or smiling?
Yeah.
but you see, we haven't been able to get to the crux of the matter from Port Harcourt. Now I'm a bit pessimistic. We will get it in Abuja if we can't get it in Rivers, which is the theater. But we know something. Both gladiators are vocal. I have heard from the FCT minister he is ungrateful. This is open, press briefing. I have also heard from the governor that, well, now I am in charge. He said he just became in charge since February. We also know for a fact that Mr. President intervened. 8-point plan, for reconciliation drawn up and seemingly agreed to. So what do you make of all of this? Why does it seem that the intervention of Mr. President may not have put an end, to the wrangling?
Well, let me assert that I'm not from Rivers, so I am
You are excused.
supposedly neutral in this discussion. It does not affect me directly as a Rivers citizen, but it affects me directly as a Nigerian citizen. Because the crisis in Rivers is actually a manifestation of the failure of our democracy. Democracy thrives, under a circumstance where you have strong institutions, regulating the activities of individuals. And democracy is like a bridge. It has some guardrails. And one of the strongest guardrail of democracy is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mm-hmm. The second strongest institution of democracy, or a guardrail of democracy, is the political party. In a system where we operate our constitution mostly in breach rather than compliance, and where the political parties do not have control over anybody, rather you have powerful individuals who determine what the constitution says, powerful individuals who determine the direction the political parties go, you know that democracy is not actually being practiced as it should be. So this is where we have our greatest setback in all of this, where individuals with power are the determinants of what happens in a democracy. Mm-hmm. That democracy is bound to have the kind of hiccups we're seeing in Rivers State. So my own understanding of all of this is that, look, there are certain aspects of the Constitution that are very clear. And those aspects of the Constitution are not actually being implemented the way they should be implemented.
In Rivers State? In
Rivers State. We are supposed to have political parties that could intervene in crises like this between their members, no matter how powerful the members are. But the political parties are like impotent to intervene in situations like this. So we are having this problem in Rivers because of these factors. But since you said we should look for solutions, solutions are very easy to find. If my brother, the FCT minister, says Fubara is quote and unquote ungrateful, ungrateful to who? Is it to him or to the people of Rivers? Because the mandate Fubara got, no matter how he got it, that mandate belongs to the citizens, the people of Rivers. So his gratitude should be to the people of Rivers, not to an individual, no matter how powerful, no matter what role the individual played in making him governor. Secondly, if Fubara thinks that he has also arrived beyond a point where he could listen to anybody, that again to me is faulty.
But not unconstitutional.
Nothing unconstitutional about it, but
okay.
It's faulty because, look, we all are supposed to be building our structures of governance as a partnership, not as individuals who are acting solo. So each one has to give so that the whole can be strong. The way I'm looking at it presently is that if we do not nip the crisis in Rivers in the bud, it may snowball. Others may also think in the same direction. Crisis may erupt in areas that we don't expect. There are examples. Before somebody wakes up and tells you it's the Nigerian factor, everybody does it. No, it's not true. We have our current sitting vice president, Kashim Shettima, even as the vice president, when he goes to Maiduguri, he accepts that Zulum is his leader in Maiduguri. Dr. John Kayode Fayemi was instrumental to bring in Oyebanji. But when he goes to Ekiti, Oyebanji is his leader. So it's not a Nigerian factor. It happens. There are places where you could say this thing did not, happen in this direction. I think that, my brother, the FCT minister, no matter the role he played in bringing in Fubara, must accept that as at today, it has pleased God Almighty to make Fubara the governor of Rivers State. Okay. Let us concede that to him, that he is the governor and the leader of the Rivers people. Let us also concede that, the current FCT minister, when he was governor of Rivers State, he actually, was instrumental in supporting his former accountant general to become the governor. But the fact that Fubara once served under Wike means that at least he should have some measure of respect for the person that was once his boss. So if both of them agree that, look, the new reality is that we have a leader in Rivers that is not myself, and then the other one says, look, the reality is that I had a former boss who was kind and good to me, and then they now drop whatever ego sentiments that are pushing them into these unnecessary bickerings and think of the Rivers people. But like my brother, the barrister said, everything we're doing must be within the realm of the Constitution. What does the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria say in situations like this? For example, I do remember that in the Second Republic, my governor, the governor of my state, then Gongola State, wanted to contest on a different political party that brought him. He had to resign for the deputy governor to become the governor. If we had that kind of situation in our current constitution, where a person must resign if he's leaving his party, a lot of these crises that we're facing today may not have happened. In fact, the Rivers crisis won't have happened, because the people who said they have decamped to another party would have lost their seat if we had done that. Okay. But in the case where we just interpret the Constitution the way we want, the Constitution says you cannot leave the party that sponsored you unless there is crisis within that party. And then who determines whether there is crisis or not? The Constitution itself, it's couched in such a way as to protect ruling class interest. It's not necessarily, for the people. Because all this, if I want to decamp from my party, all I need to do, if I have a few money with me, is to empanel a group of people and call them a faction of my party and do the need. So we need to go back to the Constitution. We need to go to the political party. In all of this crisis, since the crisis started till today, I have not heard the voice of the PDP, either at national or even at Rivers level. What are they saying? These are members of their party bickering, and they were the ones that provided the platform for this man to contest. What is the party saying?
Let's try and provide, a clear and plausible framework for this for our conversation. So that, because Barrister Guche raised two issues. He mentioned or talked about, though in a very subdued manner, the process of emergence of the governor and the issue of godfatherism. But we know that the court had firmly affirmed the governor as the duly elected governor of Rivers State. So we cannot even...
the process is taken care of.
Yeah, so that process already is taken care of. There's no contention about whether or not, he was duly elected. The court had affirmed that. But on the issue of godfatherism, and you have talked about Constitution, by your comments or remarks, you have certainly affirmed godfatherism in politics. So where do we draw the line between godfatherism and the constitutional provisions of a state executive?
No, I think there's no provision for godfatherism in the Constitution.
No.
So let's agree on that.
No. You have said, okay, if the former minister said, be grateful because I had done this. I mean, godfatherism it might not be in the Constitution. I mean, it's something that is not written. It's not a written, agreement. It's something that we all know. I mean, everybody, Ibim has a godfather in politics. And I'm sure you also have a godfather
I don't.
in politics.
You no longer
I
have.
honestly don't.
You no longer have.
I never had.
You no longer have.
I never
Let's say there is something like godfatherism in politics.
Yeah.
And there's also a constitutional provision of the roles and mandate of an executive governor. Where do we draw the line in the case of Fubara and Wike?
There is no role for any godfather in the governance system. Whether there is a godfather or there is no godfather, there is no role completely in the Constitution. And that's why I'm telling you that it's the failure of the political party. Technically, constitutionally, everybody who is elected into government, the godfather, quote and unquote, is the political party. If a powerful figure within the political party, plays a role in somebody's emergence, that person is still a product of the political party. It is the failure of our political parties to play their roles. And it's because we never handed the political parties to the people. The party members do not fund their political parties. The party members do not determine anything about the political parties. That's why nature abhors a vacuum. Some powerful individuals have seized the political parties and have become more or less the political parties themselves. And so the godfather thing is failure. It's happening because of the failures of our political system. Now, but what we are saying is that in the governance of any state, there is no provision anywhere for a godfather to participate in the governance. But that the person in charge, if he seeks counsel, because look, let me tell you, whenever you are to embark on a journey and you know somebody who has gone through that route in the past, it will be very wise of you to seek the counsel of that person so that you can avoid the pitfalls that the person fell into. That is the whole essence of it. When you seek the advice of your predecessor, it's not because you want to kowtow to the predecessor, but you listen to the predecessor because, one, the predecessor had followed that route before. He knows, he has experience. Secondly, he had institutional memories, because there are people who will come and pretend that you are new, you don't know anything, something that was done. In fact, even contracts that were paid for, they can manipulate the documents and ask you to repay again, unless if you have a very good relationship with their predecessor, who will say, hey, hold on. I can remember that I had signed to pay for this guy. He is lying, or something like that. So seeking the advice of your predecessor, listening to your predecessor, is for you to gain the advantage of the person's experience and the person's institutional memory of what happened, and to avoid the mistakes the person's made.
All right.
Because definitely he must have made some mistakes.
So in summation, from your view,
yeah,
do you think Fubara overstepped his bounds? Just few months after
I think I don't want to be judgmental about it. What I will say.
What would you have advised him?
What I would have advised him to show utmost respect to his predecessor, who incidentally, by his own confession, played a role in making him governor.
In what context is this respect? Because
it depends on
within the context of, like I said, leveraging on the person's experience and institutional memory. It's within that context, not within the context of what am I going to do, how am I going to do it, when am I going to do, who am I going to appoint. No, but that you have a huge quantum of institutional memory. 8 years on the saddle is not 8 days.
Ahmed Sajo, you and I know that if it is as simplistic as you put it, there will be no crisis.
But they have
if it
to
is just to seek advice, which I will either take or not take. But
that is the constitutional position. That's the constitutional position.
Sorry, Honorable Sergeant,
everybody
let's head back to Port Harcourt.
Yes.
Everybody that advises him
Please
now
hold on. Let's bring Ibim.
We'll come back to you. Let's head back to Port Harcourt. Now, Ibim, you are in Rivers State. I just want us to get some more perspectives before we begin to dig into what the solutions. If we get all the causes and consequences, then we'll begin to dig in more easily into what the solution might be. Now, how would you think or say that governance or the people of Rivers have been affected or impacted by this whole crisis? For one, the House of Assembly complex was claimed by this crisis. That one is in the public domain. But in what other ways has governance suffered, the people of Rivers suffered, since you are in Port Harcourt?
Okay, so first, before we go to that, I'd like to clear a few issues, because sometimes if matters are left, then they won't be understood. So you have a situation where Governor Siminalayi Fubara had consistently said, "I'm suing for peace," and the FCT minister, in fact, if you recall and if you play back even tapes on your station, you would hear several times when he said, "My Oga," which shows that he did, in fact, at the beginning, I know that Rivers people were kind of upset with Fubara and saying, "What is this? Why is this governor not doing his governance?" Well, every commissioner was chosen by Nyesom Wike. His chief of staff was chosen by Nyesom Wike. All of the things around him were chosen. He didn't fight it. And it's important when we make the commentary to recall that this gentleman had stayed and said, "We're part of the same political family." And he said that even up till last week. And I didn't want confusion. I'll put that aside. However, if you are governor, you must govern. That's how to be a governor. You must govern. You must leave a legacy. You don't want to be elected governor and finish after 4 years and you cannot show that you have governed. And I agree completely that the prebendalism in our democracy or in the way we behave might have affected certain things. But we must allow people do the jobs we elect them to do. How is this crisis affecting Rivers people? Right now, there's an economic summit going on in Rivers State. And yesterday, at the opening, I was very pleased. Why was I pleased? First, because people were just allowed to go online and register. It didn't have the coloration of politics. You didn't have to belong to party X, Y, or Z. You just went online, you registered, you attended the summit at the Obiwali Conference Center. That, for me, said a lot. The hall was full. Rivers people doing business, and people who are not Rivers people doing business in Port Harcourt were in that hall. And the governor's conversations around the ease of doing business and the kinds of investments that will be coming into Rivers State were very, very significant for me as a Rivers person. Honestly, that is the crux of the matter. Now, you know, I've spoken in different places and I've said this entire thing for me is a storm in a teacup. Because the percentage of the people involved in it are so infinitesimal that it should not affect our lives. There are 5.6 million Rivers people who have to do business and earn a living. And their lives really cannot be put on hold because of the wherefores and whereofs of a tiny minority. Certainly not. I don't think it should be. I like the fact that projects are going on. I like the fact that the summit is going on and Rivers people are having a conversation regardless of political inclination. That yesterday in that hall, that gave me a lot of comfort. And I think that that is what is important to me as the Rivers person. Can this governor do his job? Deliver on projects. Make sure the environment is good for me as a private person doing business to do my job. You know, to be able to have my children come to school and go from school in peace. Those are the things that matter to me as a business person who runs a school in Port Harcourt. As the woman that owns a farm, that's what's important to me. Can I get my farm produce into the farm? Do I have electricity? Do I have roads to take it out? That's what matters to me. The fact of somebody's discomfort because another person is doing his job, honestly, becomes an irritation at some point. In the beginning, you bet it and say, okay, people settle now, people settle there. At some point, if you're a citizen living here, you get irritated. What is all of this about? Nobody can play God in the life of another person. And whilst everyone may not have a political godfather, I don't have a political godfather, clear. Point of correction. I was a journalist doing my job and I got appointed. I didn't go to beg for it, nor did I have a godfather open a door for me. But the fact remains that if any of us gets to office by virtue of anybody else, the next thing is that got to office by virtue of the former First Lady and former Governor Didi. Do they become God in his life because of that? No. Should he so show them some gratitude? Yes. Should that gratitude become servitude? Definitely not. That's really the point of this. So let's not pet it. Let's not bandy and make it look like, no. And who voted people into office? No matter how much whoever wants to help whoever, if the people do not cast a vote, you don't become it. So if the people have voted you, you owe the people your first loyalty to deliver to them services. And honestly speaking, that's what it should be about. The questions we should be asking is a governor delivering on service to the people of River State? And if he's not, then the people should ask him to leave. But if he is, then
I do hope that the Zoom connection does not really affect our conversation. And but okay, we want to move forward at a time when the Mr. President intervened. You know, everyone, especially the people of River State, breathed a sigh of relief, and then an 8-point, agreement was signed. I'm just wondering, how many of those points did the governor, that's Governor Fubara, fulfill?
7 out of 8. And the 8th one he had not fulfilled because there were 2 cases in court. 2 cases in court, and that had still not been set aside, forbidding him to represent the budget. So at the end of the day, we've got to ask ourselves, so should this governor now become a rascal, a judicial rascal, and just do what he pleases, regardless of what the court says? In any case, they come back from Abuja. The governor is implementing, and some of us, I'm asking. In fact, I was one of those who said, no, I'm not sure this agreement is real now. Did the governor actually sign it? Where is the red ink? I was one of those who said that. We're seeing them implementing, calling the people and doing X, Y, Z. And then what goes on? The other side is continuing with their cases. They do what they like. And everybody keeps saying, what of the other side? So it takes 2 to dance the tackle. So, I mean, again, it doesn't matter what you put on paper. What does the law say? Can you just override the Constitution, override the law, override the courts, do what you like? Then at what point can we then show responsibility? I think that, well, Claire, on this matter, I'm a Rivers person, so I have a dog in this fight. It matters to me.
Yes. I'm sorry, just again for public consumption, because right now you said the governor fulfilled 7 out of the 8 points. One of the points that people consider to be an important one was the reinstatement of the lawmakers. The 27 or so lawmakers, which we are told he never did, and that has been the crux of the resurgence of the crisis. Now, why was that point in that agreement not effected?
That provide a place for them to sit, right? And what he talked about was representing the budget there, for which there were 2 cases in court. Look at the cases the governor took. It said the governor should withdraw all cases. The governor withdrew his own cases. The speaker that was loyal to the governor resigned. But Rivers elders and leaders of thought went to court to say, you're not representing the budget. The case is in court. And not just one case, 2 different cases in court, forbidding the governor to do that. Now, that's different. So when we say reinstating the lawmakers, he didn't remove the lawmakers in the first place. The issue of lawmakers coming or going is a matter for the courts to decide, not for the governor of Rivers State. It's the executive arm, they're the legislative arm. He has no business removing or reinstating. He can't do that. But whether they are lawmakers or not lawmakers is a matter for the courts to decide. It's not even a matter for me and you on TV to decide. We can't. Only the courts can decide that. Just like the courts decided in the case of Ondo State. Just like they decided in the case of Cross River. It's for the courts to decide. Whatever the courts decide, that will be what it is. I'm not a lawyer. I can't even claim to have read one line of law. So I can't even talk beyond what I know. So when the courts tell us what it is, then we go with what the courts have said. Until the courts have spoken, all of us can, as laymen, talk what we think the Constitution means. I have my view of what I think the Constitution is saying, and everyone else might.
Thank you for the clarifications you have made, perhaps comments. Let me quickly also get to our Port Harcourt studio, where we have a constitutional lawyer. And I just wanted to ask, Chief Oguche, one point seems to be agreed, at least we are getting somewhere, that one of the 8 points wasn't fulfilled. Now, I think the lawmakers were sacked by the court.
After.
Was there a room, was there any way the courts could have been, bypassed to have a gentleman's agreement that will reinstate the lawmakers? Was it possible to have done that?
I didn't get your question, but I'll go in the direction of the last speaker, what she put forward. I know very well that it appears that the Rivers political elites take relish in political gladiatorship. One after the other, history is bearing us witness to that. But I'll tell you that it was quite unfortunate that the president had to intervene in the manner he did. He meant very well. He's the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He's the father of the nation, and he cannot fold his hands and see a thing like that go on. But I think he didn't get quite the proper advice from his handlers, who should have told him that this is purely a constitutional matter, and you don't intervene in that matter, in that manner. In the first place, you will not call that agreement they wrote a constitutional document or one that is attached to the Constitution or a charter of government or instrument of governance or whatever name you want to label it. It is not. And we don't see any provision in the Constitution that gives fillip or support to that type of arrangement. Everything is within the Constitution. It's a living document. I went through constitutional principles last night in preparation for this interview, and I got to understand that there are 3 manners that you can approach the Constitution to understand what it is telling you. One is through the textualism approach. There's also the originalism approach. There's also the approach in which you construe the Constitution as a living instrument. And the threshold is on the first 2, textualism and originalism, which also panders to the interest of the will of the lawmakers. Then the last one, which is originalism, has to do with the people, which is the sovereignty. None of these came into play in the drafting of that document, in the acceptance of that document, and what have you. My only blame for Fubara is that he went ahead and, in the interest of peace, took the whole instrument, hook, line, and sinker. Whereas people were, contrary to the advice of a lot of people who have told him the implications. At the end of the day, he resigned from it. So he should be a gentleman to the court to that effect. But I'll tell you that nobody is bound by that document. The people of Rivers State are not bound by that document. Even no attempt was made to give it some form of legitimacy by saying, okay, let us conduct a plebiscite or a referendum. to ascertain the will of the people, the position of the masses. They are the owners of government. Those members representing them are representing them directly, and not maybe they are politicians or political elites. So as far as I'm concerned, that approach was not properly done. And the issue of the defection also, I would say that it's a primary function of every democratic system to abide by the rules of the Constitution. Due process of the law, supremacy of the Constitution, the theory of separation of powers, these basic doctrines. And it's not just a provision in our Constitution alone, but that if you come with a particular mandate of a particular political party and you go to the other side, you lose your seat. Incidentally, our Constitution only made provision for one aspect of it, which is the legislature. He didn't talk about the executive. But I was very excited when the Federal High Court sacked the former governor of Ebonyi State on that basis. And again, disappointed when the Court of Appeal came in and said, but we know that it is the tradition all over the world that if you have the mandate of a particular political party and you move with your seat, you go away. And now somebody will be very, it will be a very difficult task for anybody to be convinced that the pact or the agreement or the peace agreement entered is sufficient to keep the members of the House of Assembly there. Having moved away, that instrument is not the will of the people. It doesn't emanate from the people. Even if it does emanate from the people, considering, for instance, that a plebiscite or a referendum was conducted, it cannot sufficiently put the members who have defected back to their positions. Constitutional instruments must be respected. It's a sacred instrument. It must be attached to every bit of sacrosanctity. We know how much so many of us struggled in the Adeko days and all that to bring in this constitutional ambience, this democratic ambience. And everything hangs on the Constitution. If you go beyond the Constitution to bring extraneous factors, extraneous issues, matters that are clearly aberrational of constitutional provisions, there you're creating a threat to that democracy. And some of us who have been in the activists' reign, for quite some time will not allow that to happen. The president shouldn't have intervened. Now, in all these scenarios, nobody has talked about the position of the people of Rivers State. Has they expressed themselves in any manner? Have they done anything to show that this is the direction our thoughts are going, this is the direction our interests are going? Then what else is constitutionalism? What else is democracy? Social justice encapsulates every aspect of representation, every aspect of politicking, every aspect of governance. And for you to get a proper thing, then you make sure you do it very well. And the courts that are supposed to intervene did not intervene. We met a galaxy of indiscretions by the courts. One court was given an order restraining the governor from not recognizing a particular body. Another court was given an order restraining that this other body should be recognized. One other court is saying the local government's revenue and fund should not be withheld by the governor. Another court, they are running over themselves, trying to please whoever, and that is totally wrong, because that's why we are saying that the NJC should not stop, the National Judicial Council should not stop at reviewing the decisions of the courts or the performance of the judges. They should be very active in ensuring that when you have a whole lot of cases, different cases from the political elite here and there looking for one relief or the other, a system should be put in place to bring all these cases together in a form of consolidation. Because the core issues before the court is the issue of the defection, the validity or legality or constitutionality of the agreement, which none of the courts have made a pronouncement on. So that action of circumventing the provisions of the Constitution, going this way and doing that way, which is the manner of politicians, should be discouraged. And that's why we still say, just like the body of senior advocates of Nigeria said the other day, that a constitutional court be created specifically for this purpose.
Barrister Guche, thank you. Thank you. You've raised some points that are not, debatable. And the first one is, of course, that the intervention of Mr. President does not, the 8-point agreement, it's not a document. It's not a binding document. But of course, that as an agreement, that both parties ought to have been gentlemanly, to, respect the agreement. But well, some happened, some did not happen. That's basic. But let's agree that Minister Wike's, is hot. I mean, if you nurture someone and then you were very instrumental in that person getting to a very high position and all that, you expect some form of, loyalty. And that he didn't get that. He has, a moral, right to feel the way he feels or he's feeling. On the other hand, the Governor Fubara, also, having been duly certified, duly elected by the people of Rivers State by a competent court of law, is the executive governor of Rivers State by the grace of God. He has his constitutional responsibilities, which he ought to discharge, without fear or favor. Now, is it possible for him to have done that, for instance, appointed his commissioners, his executive council members, taking some initiatives, bold initiatives, some laws and some very action, without some form of, wisdom, counseling, like Honorable Sajo said, from his, benefactor? Was it possible? Would it have been possible for him to do that? All right. I'm told that Barrister Oguche, you will respond to this once we come back from this commercial break. All right, welcome back to the program. And Barrister Oguche, if you are still with us, I do hope you heard my question. I just asked if there was a midway that Governor Fubara could have constituted his cabinet without some form of counsel, seeking counsel, both from Wike and other, leaders within the party.
The thing about governance, a woman delivers a child, the child comes out, the umbilical cord is cut, and it should be absurd for the woman to request or expect that the child be brought back or returned to her womb. The fact of governance is multifaceted. The political party must be involved, other consultations must be made, traditional rulers, and every other thing before a council can be created. But that is at the instance of the governor, not at the instance of any other human being. I was beginning to reason how possible it could have been if you have an executive where you have a good number of the members being loyal to one particular individual and different from the governor and others, and the same thing with the House of Assembly. How do you bring in synergy? How do you bring in collaboration, cooperation? Because the governance is all about deep thinking, deep thoughts, logical deductions here and there. No single man can do it for a state as large as maybe Rivers State, and it involves a whole lot of things. The governor could not have gone ahead to make these appointments if he didn't make the consultations. But in the first place, he should have even given some due some interest to his former boss to a large extent, and see how that one will even go for peace. But the crux of the matter is that we have not developed our democracy in such a way that there's a complete seizure of influence between the former and the current and the incumbent, which is totally wrong. You find it also in the presidency, that even though they are in the sidelines, they want to virtually or literally be running the state of affairs. And it is totally wrong. The governor is the alter ego of governance in all the states. He's the chief executive, by virtue of our system of democracy, executive system of democracy. And I don't think it would be any good for anybody for extraordinary influences to begin to determine the direction the governance should go or the policy the government should take. To the very best of my knowledge, this matter shouldn't have gone to this end if the proper dialectics or dynamics were put into perspective by ensuring that everybody is carried along, particularly the people of the state. That was why when we talked initially about that peace agreement and the defection, the constitutional implications of that defection, and people felt that maybe you can go ahead and do our own thing our own way, it erupted back. It returned back, and except it is done practically very well in a very proactive manner, it will keep reverberating around the state. At the end of the day, the governor will be so distracted he will not do anything within his tenure. The people of Rivers State are the losers, because when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. As to the extent that I understand, the president played a very good role. Other people will play a very good role. But we must try to begin to win some of these political influences that are applied negatively to our political governance, that disrupts the political environment, that distorts the political space, things that have to do with this type of influence, overbearing influence, imposition, and total sometimes hijacking of a particular system for one's own personal interest. It's not just the Rivers State alone, it's all over the place. I am not from Rivers State, but I can tell you about my state that these things obtain. So there must be a particular mechanism for getting those who have served out of the way. It doesn't mean that the incumbent will not consult them. After all, they have experience. It's not that you will not relate to them or ask for their advice on certain critical issues of governance. But it's not that the person should be hanging around all over looking for a way maybe to disrupt governance or maybe to remove the rug from under the governor's feet. I don't think it's right. You find that kind of attitude or character also in our local government system, in majority of our public offices. I think the earlier this is discarded, the better for us.
Barrister Oguche, thank you very much for your contributions so far. Let me get back to Ahmed Sajo. I think we've talked a lot around what happened and how it happened and who is at fault and who is not, what should have been done. But where do we go from here? Well, what is needed is peace for development.
The first thing that we need to do is to consider the interests of the Rivers people. In all of this thing, we're talking about gladiators, we're talking about leaders, former, present. What is the position of the people of Rivers? And in talking about the position of the people of Rivers, we must have at the uppermost on our minds law and order, peace and security of the Rivers people. As of yesterday, one councillors forum issued a statement that somebody is fomenting a breakdown of law and order and the rest. For people who are struggling to make a living, I think insecurity or upheavals are not going to help them in any way or form. So whatever is going to happen should not let breakdown of law and order in Rivers State because of these struggles. Secondly, we must, like the barrister said, act to save the judiciary. Where the judiciary is giving conflicting judgments and is being, that does not give the kind of hope that the common man requires from the judiciary as the last hope of the common man. The judiciary should be saved, even if, like a lot of people are suggesting, by establishment of a constitutional court that takes a final decision on matters like this that require interpretation of the Constitution. So we don't begin to get a Rivers High Court issuing an order and then a federal High Court in Abuja of a concurrent level, giving us a different order. Now, the political parties, no matter how you want to hide it, the political parties must begin to come out and take charge of the democratic process. Otherwise, nobody has his name on a ballot paper. It is always the political parties that we have on the ballot paper. That tells you how important the political parties are to this electoral process. So why do we have crisis and the political parties are silent or aloof or on the sidelines? I think they should be the ones to take, the front seat in trying to
But
broker.
they may have intervened without making it very open. The governor attends meetings of the PDP, and I know that some PDP leaders have visited. So maybe it just wasn't made open.
No, you see, if the crisis is open, there is no point in finding solutions on the ground. Sometimes, yes, in diplomacy you talk behind the scenes, but whatever is the outcome, because people are anxious. But most importantly, Fubara has the mandate. Fubara is the governor. No matter how much you want to believe that he needs to show some level of gratitude, the truth about it is that the mandate is his own. Okay. If he fails, he is the failure. Okay. If he succeeds, then finally, my sister made one statement. It's very important. It's very key. There's a difference between gratitude and servitude. I'm grateful to you. It's different from I'm your loyal servant. The two different things.
Point noted, because we have to quickly hurry up so that, time is not faster than us. Ibim, just, all right, let me bring Barrister Oguche before we join Ibim via Zoom. Barrister Oguche, do you think there is a glimmer of hope for a truce? And from what we hear of Governor, Fubara, his remarks and utterances, what does his body language indicate there could be a truce?
Question, but your question suggests that individuals are higher than the bigger or higher than the Constitution. And that's exactly the remark President Obama made when he came to Ghana in his days and said that there are people that are bigger, stronger than democratic institutions. It's not a Governor Fubara thing. As far as I'm concerned, we cannot keep the Constitution in abeyance in any way. You cannot elect to determine how to deal with the Constitution. It is the Constitution that determines itself. It is the origo, font or origo of the people. It is a document. It's a living document, sacrosanct to its very bones. The issues in contention are matters that are already taken care of by the Constitution. If it's on the issue of the defection, Section 109 of the Constitution is self-executive. When we are saying it is self-executing, it is to the effect that when a thing like that happens, the Constitution speaks for itself. It doesn't even require the intervention of the courts to determine whether it is this way or that way. When it comes to the issue of the peace agreement that is entered, it is totally, completely unconstitutional as far as I am concerned. There are other manners that this thing can be resolved, but not in trying to interpolate into constitutional documents the things that are not there. Recall that from the onset I told you that some of us activists and commentators, we are very dogged about the preservation of constitutional sacrosanctity, to the effect that the politicians can do anything they want with the elections, they can do anything they want, the courts can give any decision they want. But when it comes to the core text of the provisions of the Constitution, we will stand up for it. Because if at the end of the day, precedence is created that somebody can go to his house and sign an agreement under the tutelage of the president over the provisions of Section 1, subsection 1 of the Constitution, or provisions relating to consistency and inconsistency, then what value have you added to the Constitution in the first place? So it is to allow the constitutional principles to prevail, the constitutional provisions to prevail, the organic documents to dominate our different maneuvers and rigmaroles in such manner that the Constitution is supreme. Supremacy of the Constitution is the very bottom line of democracy in every of its ramifications. And if we now begin to treat the Constitution as if it's something we can go to at any time at our own whims and caprices, then it's very totally and completely wrong. I will advise that the constitution be made to prevail. The courts have been reluctant to make very frontal and direct decisions on the issues that the antagonizing issues between the gladiators. I'm very, very sure that somebody has just said that they will keep mentioning gladiators. Nobody has talked about the people of River State, and they are the better gladiators. So long as those issues are there, there can be reconciliation between master and servant, between helper and helpee, if you permit my phrase. They can always reconcile. Political days are still very much ahead. But to the issue of constitutions, the provisions of the constitution, there's no way you can circumvent constitutional provisions. You cannot in any way keep provisions of the constitution in abeyance in these key primary issues of defection, primary issue of the validity or otherwise of an instrument made to regulate governance in this country. When it comes to the issue of governance, which other document do you have recourse to, apart from the laws that are sanctioned by the Constitution and are subject to it? If you bring anything extraneous, it is neither here nor there. Thank you.
All right, Chief Oguche, thank you very much for you. Of course, unexpectedly, a practicing lawyer, the Constitution is supreme. But let me ask, because there are other ways which may not be a problem to the Constitution. You were in politics. I don't know if I should say you are in politics.
He's still a politician.
Is there room for a political solution still?
Yes.
And what might that be?
Yeah, I think there is room for a political solution. But like the barrister said, the Constitution is supreme in this matter. The sacrosanct nature of the Constitution cannot be, thrown overboard. But political solution means that some measure of diplomacy can come in to broker peace. But this issue of master-servant must be eliminated. Helper-helpee, fine. But there should be no master-servant relationship, because in a master-servant relationship, the master is always right, the servant is always wrong. And so, but if we eliminate that master-servant relationship, and then we now look at it from a position of equal participants on the political scene that needs to cooperate, we may find a solution. Leaders have intervened. The current president has intervened. The former president has intervened. Like you said, probably behind the scenes, the political parties are intervening. We hope that the interventions will resolve. But whatever interventions we're going to do, the Rivers people must not suffer. Governance must continue. Law and order must be maintained. Projects must be completed and executed and delivered to the people. These things should not be interrupted. But all other things that we're doing should leverage on the fact that there is a government in place, there is governance taking place, and there is service delivery to the people of Rivers, and that the people of Rivers are the ultimate decision makers in matters of this nature. That the people of Rivers must be the ones to expect the service delivery and to receive service delivery. And I think that is at the core of the whole thing. But like I started, I'm also ending it this way, that we need to consider the guardrails of our democracy. The Constitution, the grand norm, is the number one. Number two is the political parties and the political systems. And then number three, which is, again, very key, is to always bear in mind that there must be peace, law and order in River State, so that it doesn't, because if it breaks down, it can snowball.
Of course. I don't know if Ibim's connection is right now. Ibim, good to have you back. Sorry for the poor connectivity. I was just going to ask if there is a glimmer of hope, for a truce, and if the PDP platform could be a viable one, to even achieve this truce.
with Ahmed there, that the political party should be the platform to achieve the truth. That's how it should be. I agree completely with that. I also think that we must, the best way to resolve something is not to leave it to conjecturing or to the whims and caprices of the players. I like the fact that we have the ground norm, and that's what our constitution is. So everything we do in terms of resolving this matter must center around the ground norm to make sure that, look, whatever we're doing, we're not working outside the constitution. Otherwise, there'll be rascality in the democracy, and we can't afford that. Something must guard and protect us from the whims and caprices of, of political actors or political players. And yes, if we can do all of that, it would be helpful. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? I'm an eternal optimist. And my answer would be yes. I don't see why not. I don't see why not. But whatever the case may be, all of the players must understand where their rights stop, where the nose of the other man begins. Until you understand that, there's going to be a problem. Because you've got to respect each other. Like they say, respect is reciprocal. So yes, I think that all of this can really be resolved. I think that at this point where we are, having this, and I love what the lawyer said, I do wish that all of these cases can be consolidated and we get the hearing once and for all, and we're able to move on because, okay, this is the position of the law. So if all of that happens, that would be great. For the people of Rivers State, what matters is that they can get up and go about their business. The governor of Texas is whoever he is. The other Texan doesn't really care. As long as the governor of Texas ensures that all of the things that governance must provide for the people is happening, people don't care. People don't even know who the governor of New York State is. At the best, the people in New York City know who the mayor is. At the best. But in many cases, it really doesn't matter. So the important thing is, let government ensure that the structures work and people go about their business. That's very possible to do. Again, I keep saying that just being in the room yesterday, and you won't understand except you sat in the room at the Rivers State Economic Summit, just being in that room and seeing the fact that different interests were in that room yesterday gave me enough glimmer of hope to say, you know what, Rivers State can work regardless. Because in that room was everybody. Okay? Top businessmen, small-time market women, middle businessmen, everybody was in the room. And everybody's interest was, how can we move with our personal lives?
Semenitari, let me thank you very much for your contributions on the program. It's been a pleasure and quite enlightening having you share your thoughts and time with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me also thank Chief Festus Oguche, constitutional lawyer who joined us from our Port Harcourt studio. Thank you very much for your contributions on the program today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure making my contributions here on this program this morning.
And back here, let me also thank Ahmed Sajo, who is a former commissioner of information in Adamawa State and for information and strategy, right? And a public affairs analyst. We thank you very much for finding time to come join us.
Thank you very much. And we all pray that this crisis will soon be over and Rivers State will thrive as it has always thrived. And Nigeria also will thrive as a democracy.
Thank you. And that's been Good Morning Nigeria for today. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you join us again tomorrow for another episode of the program. I am Victor as well. See you then.
And we all share in the optimism of Ibim, Semenitari, and of course all the other guests for Rivers State. I am Claire Adilabu Abdulrazak. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.